I'm Rachel Padilla. I'm an artist. I started a new painting today. As you can see, I've already got some underpainting laid out, and as I'm working today, I was thinking about a question that someone asked me about a piece that was involved in a group show. And that question was if my backgrounds were printed and then I painted on them. And the short answer is no. I reflected on that question as I painted this moment in time. I was thrilled to get a question about my work. I don't get a lot of feedback on my paintings, and this particular question of why my backgrounds might look printed had never really occurred to me. So I thought more critically about my painting technique as I worked. When beginning a painting, I always do the background first. There's usually a figure involved or a subject involved in my paintings, so while everything is sketched out beforehand, I will work that background right up to the edges of the figure, even overlapping the lines that I've already drawn out. Then I will work on the figure itself and then the foreground. Another thing that occurred to me as I work is that I always paint the edges of my canvas. I find this easier to do as I'm doing the main body of the painting, and as I work, you will see that I pick up my canvas a lot and paint around those edges so that the detail is just as clear on the edges as it is in the background. My backgrounds of late have been a lot more detailed in that the space in which I live in Georgia is very overgrown with bushes and trees and vines. So the backgrounds can get very elaborate and very layered. Now, this technique of painting from background to foreground isn't that unusual. But I think that perhaps the detail of my backgrounds, the elaborate technique that those are finished in, might lend to a more layered or collage feel, giving the figure in the foreground a feeling of being placed in that scene later, like you would layer pieces of paper or pictures for collage work. I think it's really apparent in this video that my paints are not super opaque, and that is because of the use of matte medium. It allows me to extend my paints, and as you listen, you can hear that I do a lot of blending. My brush in many cases is almost dry as I smooth out marks, and I think that probably gives an additional layer of a print rather than a painting. In a lot of paintings you can see the brush marks, and if you look closely at my work you can as well, but there's not a lot of heaviness to the paint. There's not a thickness that builds up of my paint because it's so smoothed out and it's already started out pretty thin. Makes it easy to do fine lines. As a college student, I tried really hard to conserve my paint. I think this is still evident as I use a ridiculously comical small amount of paint when getting my palette of colors ready. I don't like wasting art supplies. I have some brushes that I used in college still. I keep my art materials and try to conserve them where I can. And I think that's when it hit me. The way in which I layer the background to the subject, to the foreground, the thinning of my paints with mediums, the painted edges, the smoothing of my paints with an almost dry brush, all lend to my style. But it ultimately goes back to my need to conserve paint and materials. So while the short answer is no, my backgrounds are not printed, the longer answer is my backgrounds look printed because I'm cheap. Thank you so much for joining me in this exploration of my painting technique and my stinginess of art supplies.